Broad Street Review Podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. When the Quaker Oats Company announced the retirement of the Aunt Jemima brand, my first thought was to talk to playwright Brie Knight, whose play titled PANCAKE QUEEN told the story of Nancy Green, the woman hired to portray the figure. Here is my interview with Brie Knight. I'm sitting here with Brie Knight. Brie Knight, welcome. I'm so glad I got a chance to talk to you. I remembered when PlayPenn presented PANCAKE QUEEN, and I said immediately that I wanted to talk to you. And then we ended up having a great lunch where we did have a good talk, but it was off the record. And I walked away going, well, that was just for us. And I really appreciate that. But I'm gonna have to return to this so we can have a broader conversation. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up one morning and there was this post that said, they're gonna change the name of Aunt Jemima to something less racist. And then I saw all the memes for we should change it to Aunt Karen, and I thought that was funny for a second, but then I was like, that's no better. We can't, let's not make it a laughing matter here. Like this and Uncle Ben and so many other names for these companies have just been the standard for marketing. And then it sort of checks all of these boxes where we're looking at our history, particularly the country's history, and how Black bodies have moved us forward in ways that have left us behind. Yeah. And it's like, how did you not know that you were using the image of a Black man or a Black woman to sell your product? How did you not know that, some of your lowest paid employees were people of color, predominantly Black people, who were not getting a piece of the success that you were patting yourselves on the back for having? Mm-hmm. And so, when I thought about the Aunt Jemima piece and PANCAKE QUEEN, I was just like, that presentation was part of the Foundry, right? Or was it a one-off kind of?
PlayPenn, it was presented through the Foundry, which I am an alum of the Philadelphia Playwrights Incubator Lab. I actually started developing PANCAKE QUEEN in 2014. So it's not like this is a relatively new piece. I've been developing, and she's gone through. I call the play Nancy because Nancy Green is the woman, the real, very real woman who brought to life the first iteration of Aunt Jemima, as you're saying, Darnell, to sell this quote unquote revolutionary just add water pancake mix, in 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Because I've been working on the play so long, and I myself, as the creator and playwright of PANCAKE QUEEN, really have come to love Nancy Green, and the play has really become about. So, gosh, how much time do we have?
we have all the time. We are virtually on the air, so we have endless amounts of time. Cool. I'm plugged in, wired, got good lighting.
Good. So the play really started in disgust. I am ashamed to say that I actually didn't really know anything about Aunt Jemima when I started my research into this play. I don't recall if I thought she was real, but I didn't know anything about how this character of Aunt Jemima came to be. We're sitting here buying it, what her what the implications of having Aunt Jemima on our breakfast tables in the 20th/21st century, what that means. And then as I started digging a little bit more and actually found out that there was this woman named Nancy Green who was a former slave. So she spent a good 20 years, the better formative part of her life, as a piece of property. As like you're saying, Darnell, the foundation, Black bodies are the foundation of American capitalism, but yet we ourselves are not able to really participate in the same benefits that come from such capitalist, ventures. And I think Pancake Queen really speaks to that. So here we have Nancy Green, a former slave. She, due to the Emancipation Proclamation, was freed for about 30 years and then had this opportunity to essentially portray Aunt Jemima, premiering this self-rising pancake flour at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. And I said to myself, wait a second, this mammy caricature is rooted in racism and racist ideas of Black people, Black women. And then I started to do a little bit more research, and turns out, lo and behold, that Aunt Jemima actually existed in minstrel shows before even the product. So you've got the mammy caricature, the Aunt Jemima. So there's actually a song in Pancake Queen, that's the Aunt Jemima song, that was a minstrel show song. So the caricature Aunt Jemima existed before the pancake marketing. I don't know the actual tune, but I kind of sing it like, old Aunt Jemima, oh, oh, oh. He smacked his lips and then he kissed her, oh, oh, oh. So here's Aunt Jemima's body being commodified, being sexualized, being utilized as entertainment. Aunt Jemima in minstrel shows was portrayed by white men in drag and blackface. So rumor has it that the proprietor of the self-rising pancake flour went to go see a minstrel show, saw this Aunt Jemima / mammy caricature, and saw the reaction of the crowds and said, wow, that is really awesome. And she is engaging the crowds, the populations are responding well to her. I think that's really going to be the new marketing icon. And then it went a step further when the self-rising pancake recipe was sold to a man by Randolph T. Davis, who was one of the relatively larger flour / millers in the Midwest. He got a hold of the recipe and the idea of Aunt Jemima and actually took this revolutionary just add water pancake mix and the marketing, what now I guess we'll call an icon, and he personified her, put her in the flesh by hiring Nancy, a real Black woman, to portray Aunt Jemima selling pancakes at the World's Fair. So that, so I started this play. I kind of went off on a tangent here, but I started this play in anger, right? Being like, being angry over the image of Aunt Jemima, my own, I think, really reckoning with my own ignorance. And I came into this play writing really angry. Then as I did more research, I really got to know Nancy, and it became much more about telling her own story. We don't know a lot about Nancy, and I think because Aunt Jemima and Nancy melded, the identity of Nancy melded into Aunt Jemima, which is why a lot of people think that Aunt Jemima was a real woman. So the history of Nancy and the history of Aunt Jemima are forever linked. And now we're sitting here talking about taking away Nancy and her experience and her truth. and we're not having conversations. That's the other thing, Darnell, like separate from Pancake Queen is all of this. Everybody is so uptight and butthurt, and it's like these statements, you know, saying I'm not racist, okay, like this denial, because racism does exist, and by you denying and saying I'm not racist, automatically like you feel like you get to wash your hands. I've had people say to me, oh, I don't say the N-word. Oh, so you don't say the N-word, and that absolves you from any racism, but I have to sit here and go through my life being called that. Like, but because you don't say it, you get to wash your hands clean of being racist. But you're not going to sit here and call people out for calling me that word. You're not going to sit here and engage me in a conversation about the history and etymology of that word. Everybody's so butthurt right now that we can't have a conversation.
Yes.
Everyone, you know, and I think it's reflective of these statements. It's reflective of what you're saying. Everyone's like, oh, well, we didn't know. I absolve myself because we didn't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I had to comment to someone who was upset about, you know, I made some post that was like, you know, I'm watching all these people's outrage about wearing masks and about Black Lives Matter. And I had gone on this back and forth with this person, and I ended up saying, I was like, of course you don't understand this. It has been our responsibility. We're required to understand your history, but you're not at all interested in our history. And this is why you don't understand any of this. So you're sitting here saying like, I don't get it. Like, what is the big deal? And it's like, this is the point. This is the problem. How is it that we went through the same schools that you went through, yet we acquired this knowledge? And now you're getting this knowledge and everyone's telling you, and you're like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Well, like, I don't understand where all this is coming from. We're trying to educate you. And you're still resisting this knowledge. Like, you didn't have this information before, and it's okay to say that you didn't. But now that you have it, you're still pretending like it is not a problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is fear, because the system needs to be dismantled. Quite frankly, you know, in order to solve whatever, you know, in order to solve racism, I don't know if it'll actually ever be solved, because there will always be haves and have-nots.
And this is like the tortoise and the hare. Yeah. And we have been the tortoise for far too long. Yeah. And there's such a head start. And this is the part that people don't understand. It's like, you can't even fix it by just cutting a check or just saying we're sorry. Like, you know, there's too many years of damage that was done here. So, and you still don't want to acknowledge it, even though you're so detached from it. Like, it's very simple to say, okay, now I understand that I have benefited from this. But you know you didn't start it. You didn't sign these documents. You didn't agree with this at the time. So just accept the fact, wow, okay, so I can be the instrument of change. I can actually help move the country in a different direction. And I can move forward with this knowledge and grow and be better for it. But instead, the write-off is just what's disheartening.
Well, and I think that there's a couple of challenges. I think the first thing is this idea of silence is complicity or complacency. And I think that that's where a lot of these well-meaning white people specifically to then feel the need to speak out because they do want to be deemed allies. I think that's the other issue. I don't think it's for white people to call themselves allies. Yes, I don't think it's up to you to say we're an ally. You can work to be an ally, and you can work to be anti-racist, but you are not anti-racist and you are not an ally. It's not up for you to determine to get, like, you know how you don't give yourself a nickname, you don't give yourself.
Yeah, someone else gives you the nickname and then it just catches on.
But I think this whole idea of silence is complicity. Silence is complacency, silence is consent in the terms of Black Lives Matter movement in America is really dangerous, because when organizations, individuals, other institutions hear that, then is when we get all of this quick, we have to say something, and there have been a lot of statements, whether they be specific to theater, area nonprofits, again, larger corporations or institutions, where it's all about we the institution, we the board, we the staff, we the executive directors, we. There was one statement that said, we, the organization, are gonna take a step back so that way when we speak on this next, we have actionable items. And this is from a white-led organization. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to this whole idea that it's about you. And that is white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Not white privilege, white supremacy, to make it this is about you. That your organization, institution is the expert, has gone through the experiences, that knows exactly what to say. What needs to happen is these well-meaning institutions need to say, hey, we hear you. If you really want to show support, say, we hear you, we are going to shut up and we're going to listen to what you have to say, and stop telling people, oh, well, we're taking these diversity and inclusion, we are so sorry, we're going to work better. It's not about you. It's not about you. Your organization, your institution, I don't give a good gosh darn shit, you know, because that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that Black people are being murdered for being Black. I could walk out on the street and be shot for being Black. Like, that's a simple. And at my job, they were like, what do you want to see in 6 months to know that the needle has moved? I'm like, how about you stop killing Black people for being Black? George Floyd, do we even know if that $20 was counterfeit? Because that's what all of this was over. An alleged $20 counterfeit bill. Do we even know if that has been resolved? And Black people are still being killed in the protests. And I don't even want to call them protests, in the demonstrations, because protests, I think, gives it a negative connotation. I think they're demonstrations for Black Lives Matter.
I also think that the visual of one Black man being so dangerous, whether it is a grown man or a 12-year-old boy, requires multiple police to come in and apprehend. That's the part that always boggles my mind. Like, you were so afraid of us that 4 police officers had to come here to apprehend one man, one Black man. And, you know, when you think about, like, George Floyd, you're like, there were 2 police cruisers there. How come he wasn't sitting in the back? You know, you had to have your neck on, you had to have your knee on his neck, you know, outside making a scene out of it. It was like this, and I think this whole thing, like, moved, you know, it's just the longer those altercations sort of happen, the longer those moments take, I feel like just tensions get higher and higher. And it's like, are you trying to provoke? Are you trying to get to the point where you can justify taking this person's life? Because I'm pretty sure in like a first few minutes, you could have said, you know, we have reason to believe this. We need to discuss this, you know, whatever the thing is, before it gets to this point where, you know, not only did we have to watch an 8-minute video of that moment, but all that led before it. And then the fact that we know that these videos were, these cameras were live, that something happened here and we lost 3 minutes of footage. Like, you know, or whatever the time is. Yeah, we lost that footage. So we can't speak to what happened in that moment. You know, it's so crazy. It's almost like, is there like this quiet like quota that you have to meet, if you don't take so many black people's lives, you won't get your promotion. Like, I don't understand, like, what is the driving force behind, what leads in a life lost?
I mean, I have a handful of thoughts. I mean, I think,
Please.
and quite frankly, I try to touch on it a little bit in Pancake Queen. I've had a lot of really great and also really harrowing conversations about it. But I think, and it goes back to one of your earlier statements, Darnell, is that if it starts with the Black body, okay? Mm-hmm. Our Black bodies, they, throughout the annals of time, Black bodies have been viewed and looked at as barbaric and less than, okay? Mm-hmm. If we're talking about American history specifically, because we can talk about Blacks in world history, but Black bodies in American history were forcibly removed from their homes, treated like animals, shipped over against their will, stripped of identity, religion, language, culture. Families were stripped. We, as Black bodies, were treated like chattel, okay? Sold, killed, raped, murdered, treated as animals. And that has been the foundation for Black lives living in this country. It has been the foundation for this country being built and the wealth distribution, for social policies, for laws. So you have that throughout time. Even when you sit here and say, oh, well, you have things that have gone to laws and policies that have gone to help Black people and better Black lives. They're still rooted in these ideas that Black people are less than and are not actually deserving of equal rights. So it really comes down to the fact, Darnell, I think that you have these people in power who don't view Black people as people. And that is the root of this cause. And so in Pancake Queen, for example, I try to talk a lot about the Black body, how the Black body is used, how it's commodified. You've got a handful of Black characters, starting with Nancy. So Nancy Green, she was in her 50s when she took on the role of Aunt Jemima. She was a little heavier set, and she's a little bit older. So her body is not necessarily viewed anymore as something that can benefit sexually. Do you know what I mean? But her Black body is her big warm bosom. And there's lines in this too, in the play, like her big warm bosom, her soft Black skin, like her world view, again, her westernized, white-washed worldview, Aunt Jemima's, really comforts the white people. Really is comforting. Yeah. Then there's another black woman character by the name of Beatrice. She's fictionalized. I created her. I don't think she really exists, but she's younger and she represents really the younger generation. So she, in the play, she was not born a slave, but she still is very captive to her white employers, to the white men. She's trying to escape. She's trying to find her own identity, but is always tied back to it. And poor Beatrice is sexualized. And that's how her body is viewed as a young Black woman in those times. So really looking at how Black bodies, specifically Black female bodies, have been used through time, have been stripped of our agency to build society, and then we're kind of just thrown the rags and said, here you go, like, here's the strap, do what you can with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're expected that that's called equal. And like, oh, now Blacks have a place at the table because we gave you this little bone, this little scrap. Well, Nancy took that, what she could, and she did the best that she could with it. She ended up being really philanthropic through her life. She opened a church in Chicago. She gave money to Black causes, and she remained Aunt Jemima for the rest of her life until she was hit by a car in the 1920s. In her 80s. She did the best that she could, and I've had conversation, and the play addresses that at the end, where you have another woman named Anna Cooper, also a real woman, also born a slave, and she was a little bit more what you could call like urban educated Black woman, and she really, her and her group really protested the Chicago World's Fair, the lack of inclusion of Black people within the World's Fair. And Mrs. Anna Cooper comes to Nancy at the end of the play. And again, this is a fictionalized encounter, but I really wanted to put those two perspectives at odds. A Black woman who says, we don't like Aunt Jemima, and then Nancy, who, you know, what is Nancy to do as a 55, 6-year-old Black woman, former slave? Is she going to go back to cooking? You know, so I think, Darnell, again, I went kind of on a tangent, but I think to answer your question, and something that has been the focus of my work as a playwright, as a storyteller, as an artist, is really looking at Black identity, Black lives, Black bodies, how our bodies move through these hostile environments, how we have moved through hostile environments throughout all of time, and how we continue to navigate successfully, unsuccessfully in these hostile environments. And unfortunately, Nancy lived in a time where things were overtly hostile to Black people. I think we live in a time where things are still overtly hostile, but there's a lot of sweeping under the rug that has happened. And I think we're seeing now the rug is being pulled back. So the first and foremost thing is that Black people, which is why Black Lives Matter, Black people need to be viewed as people. And for everyone who's saying all lives matter are missing the point, is that Black people need...
Wow, people? Like actual human beings?
I don't think Black people... Yeah, like I just don't think...
What a concept.
Yeah, right? You know? So I think that that's the fear. The fear, you look at... I still am upset about Trayvon, Tamir, Philando. You know, I'm so upset about so many others. Philando was 30 seconds from being pulled over to losing his life.
I never understand what goes on in the mind of a police officer who is wearing a bulletproof vest, who has a weapon, who has multiple weapons, knows how to use them, knows how to protect themselves, but immediately is so afraid that the first thing they do is run for the gun, reach for the gun. You know? And it's funny because in a weird way, I do find these elements of theater that kind of run through my head when I think about that, and I think about Chicago when they reach for the gun, and it's just
such a white musical. So, and at such a, you know, oh my God.
I know, yes, and it's
when
this
a white woman, woman. I always think about white chicks, and we can talk about the Wayans brothers as much as we want. I love white chicks when he's like, "Dear Mr. Hilton, I am a white woman about to have a bitch fit," and I just die because that's the movie Chicago right there, you know?
Yeah. I was talking about how this movement has brought to life so many terms that, you know, in frustration, we may not have been able to clearly articulate, that are just much more easier to express now. When I was So I was having a conversation and I said, when you think about tone policing, when it's usually when a person of color is passionate about their position, someone will tell them like, I hear you, but just if you could find a better way to express that position, something more palatable, because I don't think it's going to be received well if you present it with such passion. It makes me think about Mary Poppins. When you think about a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Isn't that like tone policing? It's sort of like the only way to take this is with a spoonful of sugar. So the only way for you to actually hear what I'm trying to say to you is if I were to sugarcoat it. So I sugarcoat it, which basically diminishes its value. It tones it down so that it's more palatable for you. And and my thought would be that this only makes you think that it's not as big of a deal as it would have been if I had said it in the way that you just felt attacked and offended and vulnerable about.
Yeah.
So that was like an interesting thing when I thought about. I was like, oh, the title. I could not express that title. I was just saying, like, I don't understand how everything I say is offensive, but everything everyone says to me is supposed to just be processed, and I'm just supposed to, take it. Yeah. So I was like, so as you mentioned about your job, of course, my job was very reactionary. My day job, very reactionary. We have a committee now. I was asked to join that committee, and I said, I'm not interested in being National Negro, but I will be a part of this conversation. But I want to. The only reason I agreed is because I had been having conversations throughout the building with other employees and said, like, I don't understand how you're the leaders of this organization, yet you have no idea these conversations are being had. So I also feel like you need to hear from everyone else too. This isn't just me. Like, you can't just process everything that I'm regurgitating. You need to be ready to have some uncomfortable conversations because you were carrying through like none of this was a problem because you weren't affected by it. Like you weren't on the negative receiving end of any of this. So, you have to explain to your staff why they've been here for so long and they have not received any promotions. Meanwhile, somebody who has been here for minutes, has a new title now, new responsibilities, and probably more pay. You also have to explain why the women in your organization don't make as much money as they should, and what was the reasoning for that? And if you're a nonprofit organization where your real goal is to like break even, I mean, can you do your job and with the money that you have, but you're carrying like a for-profit who needs to like bank a ton of money for what? To like maintain the status quo when your staff is telling you that you're not paying them enough to live. And you're looking at them just like every other concern they brought to you, saying, she's being difficult.
Yeah.
Or just
the angry Black woman.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, so all of those things, like, they kept coming up, and I just, I made some comments on social media that were in general that was like, if I kept track of how many times I said, why would I make this up? And then like a lot of people responded to that. And I was like, I feel like I'm lost in my own country. Like, the other day I posted, someone commented, well, if you don't like it, why don't you just go back to Africa? I've never been to Africa. I've never been to Africa. I was born in New Jersey. I've lived on the East Coast in this tri-state area for the last 40 years. So sure, I could go across the bridge back to New Jersey, but I'm still kind of in the same area. It wouldn't make a difference. Like, there's so much to this that it's just based on ignorance for you to even make that comment. And you don't even know enough about who would have come from Africa. You don't know that there are people who look just like white people who are from Africa. It's just
not all Black people
mind-boggling.
are from Africa.
Exactly.
But the term African American in and of itself to encompass all Black experience in America in and of itself is problematic.
Yes.
And I think also when you, God, yeah. So
I thought about. I was thinking about. There was a post saying that Bill Cosby was, somehow like trying to get out of his sentence, saying that this was just an attempt to, dismantle the life of a Black man. And I was thinking about this episode of The Cosby Show where they had talked about the difference between African American, saying you're an African American, and saying you're a Black American. And I just remember, and I wish it was like as consistently played on the air as it was before, because then I could go back to it and process that episode again. But I remembered it was like, there was this conversation about like, if you can trace your lineage back to Africa, then you might, refer to yourself as an African American. But for the most part, I'm a Black American. I mean, the family that I'm aware of was born here. So yes. And this assumption that everybody is descended from slaves, without knowing anything at all, from the ignorance of people who've barely been on the planet as long as you have been. Again, it speaks to the fact that we're supposed to know this specific history that you've put in front of us, for all Americans are required to know. But this other part of history that affects many people in the country who call this country their home, you don't know anything about this at all. And but you can still openly, ignorantly make the comments that you make. Baffling.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to, and especially, so what I want to say to you, Darnell, I mean, is speak your truth. Continue to speak your truth. I so admire and appreciate you for somebody who has always done that, continues to, keep it real and strive for what you believe is right and what you believe to be your truth, and to talk about your truth. So I want to, thank you. I appreciate and respect you. And I want to say, keep doing that. And I will listen and support you as you continue to do that. And I hope that you'll do that for me, and we can do that for all of our other Black brothers and sisters. And I encourage everybody out there listening to help Black people speak their truths by listening, by shutting the hell up and listening to our truths. And like you're saying, Darnell, not to question our experiences, our truths. When we're sitting here say, hey, my grad program experience was one of the most hostile experiences that I've ever been through. And for you to sit there and tell me that it wasn't, or that I'm not like still damaged 6 years after graduating from that program.
Yeah.
And
or that you should be grateful that you were even in a grad program.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then to have like my experience, because I grew up as the token my whole life, grew up in white environments. I was pretty much the only Black body in a room, whether I be a child or whether it be a child or an adult. So a lot of the times, because I grew up in those situations, my experiences as a Black person are also discounted. So, and then I think specifically to the theater loves tokenism. Theater loves tokenism, especially Philly theater, whether it be the individual Black body on stage or behind the scenes, or whether it be the token Black story. And then everybody gets to wash their hands and say, and pat ourselves on the back and say, what a good job we did, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We're so liberal. We're so with it. Good for us.
It was just convenient timing that it happened to be February that we mounted this Black piece, this poignant Black piece.
Yeah. And more often than not, these pieces are being produced by white theaters. They're being directed and marketed by white people. And the audiences, and then I've had conversations with theaters where it's like, well, we did Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. How come the Black people didn't come to our space? How come the Black people didn't come? We did August Wilson. And it's, so
we checked off his entire canon. I don't know what happened.
Well, we cast the seagull with some Black people. I don't understand why, so I think like theater here in Philly, I think if we as theater artists really want to sit here and say we can, it's been really hard for me because I've been so mad. Sorry, I just knocked my water over. Because I've been so mad at the country, at the world, at our leadership. Kind of like you're saying, this like, how could you not have known this whole time? I think, and then going back to these statements of these organizations. Well, personally, I don't think theater at the moment really is the place to make the change, But, however, if theaters want to really tackle the challenges and really start to be and embrace anti-racism, then go for it. But I really, truly, Darnell, think that Black artists need to come together and like not wait for the white folks to give it to us. And I don't know where that's going to start. I am freaking tired. I'm exhausted. I don't know if I have the energy.
I will send you some links.
Yeah.
This has been pretty prevalent in the circles that I've been fortunate enough to lend my voice to in some way. And there has been a big conversation about there were a couple of people who reached out to me and said, hey, a while back you did this interview with Ozzie Jones, Brian Anthony Wilson, and Terrell Green. And I had labeled it something like three men of color. And it was after like the Oscars So White, and Barrymore's was like it was a crazy representation that year. And we had a conversation immediately after that. So a couple people had reached out and said, hey, I remember that great interview you did. And, could you send me a link to that or something? But in general, the collective thought process there was, I don't know why we're working so hard to change a white theater. We should just be out there filling the void. So, okay, you don't have enough space for Black stories, then we need to go create a space and watch. I mean, you could see by if you've been fortunate enough to experience Cash Goen's production, that audience is not a theater audience. I was like, where did you find all these people, these wonderful people who stay to contribute their voices to what they just experienced afterwards as well? It was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was blown away at 74 Seconds to Judgment and 5 to 10 and those pieces. Shout out to Cash.
Yeah,
I just remembered sitting there going like, wow, this is great. And it's not that there aren't pockets of Black people out there trying to find their audience without trying to force the hand of these other companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's also tough that all of these companies have leadership that in most cases the founders are still very much involved. Like they had their own sort of thought process here, So in a way, it's like, it's not really our job to force them to change in a way, but however, they are going after grants that are very much seeking diversity on stage, and then they will go check that box so they can get that money.
Right. It's not sincere.
Yes, exactly.
It's like statements. It goes back to so I liken it to affirmative action, right? Mm-hmm. So like you've got so people look at affirmative action, and you've got this like uneducated, ignorant group of people who are like, well, how come Black people don't feel like things are equal because of affirmative action? Okay, well, affirmative action does not work to improve an entire group of people, an entire race. What affirmative action does is it takes an already small group of sector of race and put them through this system and forget everybody else that's part of that race. So like affirmative action is not actually equality, it's actually making the problem bigger, And I think it goes the same with in theater, arts, culture, when you have that, like you said, it's these check boxes, it's these tick boxes that we're checking off. It's like, okay, well, we've got our one Black person, we can check this off, and not really understanding that Black person's experience, how you as an organization are into incorporating that Black person's experience in the construction of your space, of your work. And then often, like you're saying, when problematic things are said in the rehearsal room, behind the stage, in production meetings, when problematic things are said, nobody stands up for it, and then that Black person is deemed hysterical and I'm talking from direct experience here, and then that Black person is deemed hysterical for trying to stand up for yourself and being mistreated. Then what happens? What happens? Then that person gets a bad mark. Then that person gets a mark, like and that big B. They're Black. They're not gonna. They're gonna say so, and don't work with this person or whatever.
Unless you want it to be difficult.
Right. Or if you're willing to play these narratives that perpetuate stereotypes without actually adding to the conversation. And I say that because I think, and again, not to make this about me, but going back into Pancake Queen, like the play opens with a highly stylized, minstrel-esque version of the story of how Aunt Jemima came to be, the marketing, the actual marketing. And it's rooted in the old-timey racist minstrel caricatures, where you have a Sambo character who's really afraid and ignorant and dumb, and you've got the white savior coming in and saving the day, and then you've got the kind and understanding older Black woman who's really going to comfort and heal the nation with her magical pancakes because you're so hungry, white soldiers. Goodness, I forgot what my point was.
And why do you trust us with your food and your children?
Yeah.
And your land if we're not worth anything?
Yeah.
That's the part that it's like this hypocrisy. You're sitting here looking at how you can't function. You know, if you were back on a plantation and you're watching, like, this crop can't be tended to without all of these Black people out in your field. This kitchen will not function without the Black mamas that you brought into your house. These kids would not be brought up without those same Black mamas.
It's the stripping of Black identity. It's this, so the Mammy caricature, okay? And I go back, and this is another reason why the character Beatrice in Pancake Queen is so important, because she represents the children, okay, of this Black Mammy character. And in the folklore of the Mammy, to your question, is she ignores her disgusting, dirty, ugly, stupid Black children to care for the white, beautiful, pure babies. And it's that, and I think of the Betty Sayer, Aunt Jemima. I have it on my phone. Where's my phone? Here it is. You know, her Aunt Jemima. I don't have it on my phone anymore, but look it up. You know, Betty Sayer's Aunt Jemima, she's holding a white baby in one arm, the portrait, and then the shotgun in the other arm, you know, with the broom. And that's this world that Black women, that Nancy is stuck in, you know. It's like, do you want to make money? Do you, like that, you have to support yourself being a Black woman in 1893. You have to cook. You have to be a caretaker if you want to earn way less than you're worth in order to feed yourself and your family. So I remembered going back to the minstrel show, but I think, like, we need to understand the context of what art and artists are saying when we're looking at these types of images. And if it is done in a way that is meant to tell the story and not belittle, you know, then I think we need to look at it as having value in art and culture. I think we're getting a little censor happy with cancel this without having any conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people are right or wrong. I just am saying that things are happening super quickly without any conversation. And we as artists and we as theater artists, and we as Black theater artists, we can have conversations now.
Yes.
A lot of conversations that I've been having with other Black folks is that we're freaking tired of having conversations, because I, Darnell, have been saying since we started this conversation is that we have conversations since we could talk, okay?
I know, we almost want to sit in a meeting and just go,
right, I know. I know.
You're awfully quiet. Was there anything you wanted to? No, I'm good. I'm tired of saying all of this.
And now all of a sudden, and I'm torn, because in some of the conversations that I've been having with all types of folks, all races, all colors, but like a lot of the white folks now are like, well, Brie, please tell me. Or I have people who are like, well, I just want to be the devil's advocate, you know, and I'm asking these tough questions. It's like, no. It's not, I don't have to tell you anything. You know, I've been saying this stuff. You weren't listening. I've been telling my truth in my work, in my plays, in the conversations I've been having to people, even in my grad program. I used to, when I would try to stand up for myself and say, hey, what you said was racist, I got met with silence, with people ignoring me, with people never talking to me again.
Yeah. and people being afraid of talking to you because you actually told them something they didn't want to hear.
Yep.
And something they needed to hear, and now they have a fear of coming to you.
Yeah.
Oh no, every time I come to that person, they're just going to go on a tangent and things. Yeah, it's like, well, I barely get the opportunity to speak to you, so I'm going to try to give you everything I can
Yeah.
at that time. Yeah. Oh, just
yeah.
I don't know what the way forward is. I definitely understand that if we weren't at this standstill because of a global pandemic, that we wouldn't be forced to pay as close attention to this as we are now. I mean, like we said, this conversation isn't new. We've had this conversation before. It's just that, when people, it's so easy to quickly say, oh, I would love to sit and chat longer, but I have another thing to do. And it's like, do you? Because if this was important, you would cancel that or try to reschedule it or tell them the same way you're trying to get out of this with me, you could be trying to get out of that with them. So this obviously doesn't matter to you. You're just like, you're probably in your head the whole time going, how much time can I give them so that they feel heard? And then and once I get as far away from this as possible, I can pretend that, oh, that was a really great conversation. What did you do after that point?
Well, I think it goes back, Darnell, to, again, the statements of these companies, this idea of silence is consent because, or complicity, because then what it really is rooted down to, and what you said way early on, is the money. Okay. So you have this overarching statement that not saying not making a statement, not even necessarily saying Black Lives Matter, but not saying a statement, basically denying any racist action on your part, or saying we have been racist, but without really understanding how you've been racist. Like, you're just saying we've been racist, we're sorry. It's not doing anything other than showing your white supporters that you are not you're in their eyes racist, so they can pat themselves on the back. And then it also goes to money, because then that organization doesn't want to lose money for seemingly being inactive and not showing any action. So really, then again, it goes all
with the support link to stand with us. As we move forward and rethink our future.
It goes back to the money. It goes back to the money. These organizations don't want to lose face. They don't want to lose money. They don't want to lose donors. They don't want to lose support. They don't want to lose customers. So they feel the need to make these misguided statements without any real listening, without any real reckoning or real understanding of the white, and I call it white supremacy, because I hate calling it white privilege, because I think the privilege, like, I have benefited from the privilege, but I've also of the system, but I've also been a victim of the system, but I'm not white. So like, I don't like to call it white privilege. But I also realize the danger in calling it white supremacy, because I know a lot of people are going to get butthurt when they're like, I'm not a white supremacist, but the ideas that white people are better than Black and brown people is white supremacy, and our country has been founded on those principles. So that's, we need to really relook at a lot of the ways we have conversations about this. I have a solo piece called The N-Word, that it's a short solo piece, and it really looks at the word nigger and the heat behind it, why people, and it comes from my conversation with white people who have said to I don't say that word. When I was trying to have a conversation with them. And it's like, but you don't understand. It goes back to what you're saying, Darnell. It's like, do you fully understand why your butt puckers up and like you get all tense when you hear certain things, other than the fact that you as a white person have been taught this, or we as Black people have been taught this, like you're saying, with this white westernized male straight patriarchal narrative that has its fingers in every little nook and cranny of our stories in this country. And so I really wanted to put that word in and force audiences to hear it and look at it and understand the history, how it started, how it's evolved, how it's been used against Black people, why there was a period when Black people wanted to reclaim it. And it goes back to all the way back 400 years ago when Black people were stripped of our personhood and brought to this country like animals, and it's still, I just keep losing all my thoughts here. I have a pen and paper to try to take notes of like, this wouldn't happen, but like, we're not gonna solve this in this conversation.
No, we're not. We're not. I mean, it is funny because these conversations, in a way, are sort of more the same for us. I guess there's only a hope that there are people who are listening who are in that I didn't know camp, who maybe are a little bit more educated by this conversation.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.